Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Elissa, and thank you so much for allowing me to show my work at your beautiful gallery and curating it as magnificently as you did. And thank you everybody for coming to hear me talk, and Lisa Wu for filming today. So I won't bore you with where I came from in my education, but I should start with the first moment I got my hands in clay, and I knew then with the clay between my fingers that this was my destiny and where I wanted to spend my energy for as much and as long as I possibly could. So here I am many years later and building like crazy in my studio on Bowen Island with my husband and my twins over there, 9 years old. And they're here in this sculpture. I've taken body casts of them, and those are their legs. So I love clay. I just love the fact that it can be transformed, and I can manipulate it and do pretty much anything that comes from my imagination. And then when it's ready and dry enough, I can put it in the kiln and cook it hot enough that it will become basically one of the strongest materials on the planet. So I build my sculptures from the world around me. Usually what shocks me, shakes me, or makes me cry, or something I just can't unthink, so I build it. And I feel I need to get these pieces down and built before time dilutes the idea and the feelings in me. My inspiration comes from the world around me. My thoughts, concerns, and passions. You'll find often there's humor, but also a dark side to all the pieces if you look closely. And I feel all my pieces tell a story. Each piece has a story to tell. And I'll talk about that later. I'll do a tour if you want to ask some questions about the work. But I feel these sculptures are designed with an idea in mind, but in the end, it's almost the pieces talking back to me and telling me what it wants to say. And I feel a little unsettled and startled sometimes, but I feel like they know a little bit more than they let on. I hope the pieces capture the emotion of why I'm building them. And I hope that it's communicated to the viewer. I find that I'm trying to understand that pieces have a spirit or a sort of ghost in them, and I liken it to something like going into a building after somebody's passed away in there, or a really happy space. You can feel that, and I'm trying to see if that is in the work. And I hope that it is, and I hope that it stays with the pieces. So how I build is I start with an idea, and I'll sketch, and I'll research, and I will design it in my head structurally. With ceramic, there's a lot of considerations before you build, such as like structural support systems that are inside so that the piece withstands the heat of the kiln and won't sag or crack. Also, drying the piece shrinks, so you have to build to accommodate that. And if you don't start with a pretty good initial plan, you end up with big disasters and lots of tears. So yeah, lots of testing, and it's similar to building like an architect. So before I can work on the final aesthetic, I have to make sure I've got this plan down. But then, like I said earlier, it's sometimes such a surprise what comes out in the very end. I could start with talking about the skull of Archimedes over there, just for an idea of how I would build a piece. So that piece was built down on the kiln shelf, flat, and it was built with a substructure. So the wet clay was laid over the substructure. When the clay starts to dry, it stiffens up, and I'm able to withdraw, like pull out the substructure, and I've got a frame and something to build on. And then I would start to add the flowers after that, or cut away the eyes, and there's internal supports inside there. But that piece was fired 5 times in the kiln, and my kiln firings take 8 to 12 hours and about 6 hours to cool. So every firing, I'm holding my breath and in this sort of anxious state, waiting to see if it worked. So I did 3 glaze firings on that piece because I was trying to get that millennial pink. And we sprayed it on in that sort of ombre fashion. So it's pink at the bottom and lightens up to white. And the white roses at the top are inspired by the Juno Awards, where the people wore white roses on their outfits to celebrate time's up. So my studio is filled with inspirational pieces, and a lot of them I use in my work. So there's shelves of toys, antiquated dolls, mannequins, everything that could and would inspire me, but also teach me. So I collect a lot of old ceramic pieces so I can look at them closely and understand the techniques and methods that they use when they do build these very old ceramic pieces. So some people say that my studio resembles an 18th century cabinet of curiosity, and I'm always hunting for inspiration for my pieces at antique shops and knick-knack stores, and what people bring me pieces as well. So I use things from my life as well, and you'll see a lot of toys in here, which are my children's toys, and I'm trying to, by adding pieces that are directly from my life, I feel I might be adding more emotion to the work, and I'm curious and studying that sort of stuff and interested in the effect of it. So people ask how I know how to make the flowers and the techniques, and I do a lot of research on how they're done. So one of the ways I'll find information is going on YouTube and looking at the factory workers in England and how they make the roses, and I'll watch them 15 times obsessively until I get it down, and then I'll practice and practice and practice until I can do it sort of okay. But I'm trying to keep the old techniques alive because the ceramic factories are shutting down now, and you'll see in the work, like Wedgwood techniques. I've actually taken casts of old Wedgwood pieces and incorporated them into the passages piece way at the very end. You'll see the Dresden lace in some of the pieces where I soak the lace in liquid porcelain, those Dresden lace dolls. There's a lot of the Delft blue pottery. And, I mentioned the roses and the flowers, and just the slip casting, the press molding, the plaster molds. These are all techniques that they use in the old factories that I'm trying to keep alive through the work in a contemporary sense. So a lot of the work has symbolism in it, and you'll see some fading flowers and skulls and insects, shells, bubbles. These are all from the Vanitas tradition, the 16th, 17th century Dutch still life paintings. The subject matter they were dealing with was the inevitability of death and the brevity of life, but I'm using it in a more contemporary way, meaning hoping to convey a sense of live in the moment and live for now and enjoy what we have, and how precious life really is. So in the work I'm trying to represent an imperfect beauty and an impermanence of decay and the objects that are found in nature around me, and especially on Bowen Island. So that's about it. Thank you for coming.